What if Mace Windu executed Order 65 after Palpatine revealed himself? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. As Mace and the strike team make their way through the halls of the Senate building, the Jedi Master's mind is focused solely on the Chancellor and how they must stop him now. The more he thinks of what Anakin's report says, the more convinced he is that the opportunity to stop him is fleeting. But suddenly, Kit Fisto pauses.
Master Windu, perhaps we're going about this the wrong way. What do you mean? We must stop the Chancellor. I know. It's just that he has been outmaneuvering us this entire war. No matter what we do, he is one step ahead of us, because he knows how the Jedi act. So perhaps it is time to do something he doesn't expect.
Mace frowns and considers these words carefully. Part of him wants to press on ahead, but maybe that's what the Chancellor is expecting him to do. He sees Fisto's point. The Chancellor is nothing if not cunning, and he has been able to predict his moves. He thinks, what is the last thing Palpatine would expect? And suddenly scowls.
All right, come with me.
He redirects the small group into the Senate chambers, where countless senators have gathered to discuss the developments in the war. They are surprised to see Mace Windu approaching, especially when he reaches out and begins playing holo-records. These were provided to him by Anakin, and show off his conversations with Palpatine, where the Chancellor openly reveals his connections with the Sith.
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities, some considered to be unnatural.
As the video plays, gasps ripple from the crowds, but Mace raises his hands.
Members of the Senate, you have just seen the truth for yourselves. The Chancellor you trust is no more than a Sith Lord, Darth Sidious. This man has been manipulating us into war. I urge the Senate to take action immediately.
The Senate erupts into confusion and outrage as a dozen arguments emerge at once. Many shout their support, but others seem more reluctant to follow. But one senator steps forward.
This is beyond mere treason, but fortunately for you, my people have prepared for such an event. It was written into the clone army's instructions. Should the Supreme Chancellor become compromised through treason or incapacity, the GAR is authorized to execute Order 65, removing the Chancellor from power by force if necessary.
Order 65. Very well. With the army with us, we can apprehend the Chancellor. This is treason. The Chancellor has led us through war. We cannot overthrow him. Led us? Or orchestrated it? Enough. We have the means. Now it only remains to be seen if the Senate has the will to act.
The votes begin, filling the chamber with bright, flashing lights. Senator after senator enters their votes into the system. After a long, tense pause, the results flash on the massive holo-display. Majority in favor of executing Order 65.
I will relay the instructions to the Senate. The army stands with you.
With the Senate's approval and the clones backing them, Mace leads his group into Palpatine's office with renewed confidence. He's accompanied by Kit Fisto, Ajen Kalar, and CC-Teen. As they enter the room, they ready their lightsabers.
Your time is up, Chancellor. The Senate has voted. You've lost.
Lost? No, Master Jedi. It is you who are about to lose everything.
Palpatine's hand moves with impossible speed. From beneath his robe, a red blade ignites, and he lunges forward. Mace's violet blade intercepts Palpatine's strike as shockwaves ripple across the room. The Jedi follow and ignite their own lightsabers. As they surround him, Palpatine whirls his weapon around against them. He moves with unnatural speed, a blur of crimson and shadow as the Jedi close in on him. Ajen Kalar is too close and parries the first blow, but the second slices through him. Kit Fisto tries to close the gap and presses his attack. He starts to swing aggressively, trying to push Palpatine back, but none of his lightsaber strokes land as the Chancellor moves with inhuman speed and Palpatine drives his lightsaber through his stomach. Mace swings his lightsaber in a furious arc, the death of his comrades fueling him as he presses the attack. His fury builds inside him, and Palpatine has a bit more trouble dealing with Mace as he must retreat under the onslaught. CC-Teen charges in from the side, trying to flank Palpatine, but the Sith Lord anticipates it. Without breaking his engagement with Windu, Palpatine sends a blast of Force lightning from his free hand. The blue tendrils of energy slam into Sisi, throwing him across the room and into the far wall with a sickening crunch. The floor trembles beneath them as the Force rips through the air. Mace digs into his anger, charging it up rather than holding it in. He lets it flare true to his Vapad style. He springs forward and rushes at Palpatine, letting him match him attack for attack. His strikes coming faster and harder. The two lock sabers, their faces inches apart. Palpatine sneering as sparks fly from the clashing blades. Palpatine thrusts his hand forward again, using a torrent of Force lightning. Mace grimaces as he raises his saber, but the energy bounces off his lightsaber and he deflects it and throws it aside, sending sparks across the ground. Mace stands only through sheer willpower. Now that he's through, he kicks Palpatine and sends the Dark Lord staggering back. Mace's lightsaber arcs through the air, leaving Palpatine barely able to bring up his saber to block. But this defense is only temporary, as Mace comes back at him again and slices his hilt, causing the lightsaber to begin shorting out. The Chancellor's eyes widen as he looks at his lightsaber starting to fade.
It's over. You've lost.
Do it. Strike me down, Jedi. Fulfill your destiny.
For a split second, the air is thick with tension. Mace hesitates, but then plunges his saber into Palpatine's body. The Dark Lord gasps as his life drains from his eyes and then drops to the ground. As Mace stands over him, he takes a deep breath and watches as clones rush into the building to secure it, led by Commander Fox.
It's done. Inform the Senate.
Tell them yourselves, General Windu. You've been summoned by the Senate.
What?
Before he can reply, the clones point their blasters at him. Fox himself reaches for his weapons.
Sir, the Senate is most insistent.
He glances around, but then deactivates his weapon and nods. Fox takes it from him, and they escort him to the Senate floor. More clones and several Jedi have gathered, including Anakin Skywalker. But at the center of the floor are Mas Amata and Admiral Tarkin, who are ordering the Senate to calm down.
Order! Order! Speaker, what is the meaning of this?
Master, it seems you have gone beyond your power.
You were ordered to apprehend the Chancellor, not kill him. I assumed my mission was to restore order for the Republic.
Which is why we needed Palpatine alive for the investigation.
Forgive me. It was difficult to remember that in the ensuing battle.
Unfortunately, what's done is done, and now we must proceed to less pleasant business. The second reason why we've brought you here is to discuss the Jedi's standing. With the war drawing to a close, the Senate insists that the Jedi relinquish their command over the military.
Speaker, with all due respect, the Separatists are far from defeated. We cannot afford to weaken our defenses by pulling back now.
The Jedi were never intended to lead military campaigns, Master Windu. You are peacekeepers, are you not? The Senate believes it is time for you to return to that original mandate. They have been suitably weakened, and we believe the clone commanders can handle the war effort.
We have fought alongside the clones, led them through battles, because fighting in this war is precisely what is required to keep the peace. Without the Jedi, the Republic would have crumbled long ago under the Separatist onslaught.
The Senate chamber is filled with murmurs. Senators glance at one another, some nodding in agreement with Windu's words, but others looking increasingly skeptical.
Perhaps before. But things have changed. This recent development has shown how much the Republic must change. Perhaps it is time we change our leadership and society before it becomes corrupted. That is why many in the Senate fear that the Jedi Order has become too militarized. That you have drifted away from your role as peacekeepers.
Just as the Chancellor.
Master, just because the Chancellor was a Sith Lord does not make everything he said invalid. Perhaps his distrust of the Jedi was not simply an ideological difference.
Mace glares at the Admiral, but Anakin steps forward.
We understand the Senate's worries, but perhaps we could have some time to discuss this and organize a proper transition. Let the Jedi Council meet and return with a proposal within a week.
That is acceptable, Master Skywalker.
The Senate will await the Jedi Order's decision.
As the Jedi departs, they return to the temple to discuss the matters. While Tarkin is correct that they are peacekeepers, they know that he was close with Palpatine, and that this might be his way of paving the way for Palpatine's plans, but under him. However, they see that he has many supporters in the Senate who are willing to back him if they refuse. More importantly, he still has control of the army, as the clones will likely obey him. This puts them in an impossible position, as the Jedi must choose whether to agree with their demands or try and resist. Tensions run high in the Jedi Temple, as the Jedi Knights and Masters discuss what to do. It is perhaps the only silver lining of this. Anakin is granted a permanent seat on the Council to replace CC-10. After his actions in exposing Palpatine, Mace can find no reason to distrust him, and they begin planning what to do next. The first thing they agree on is to send the younglings and Padawans away in preparation for bloodshed. Yoda handles their evacuation and searches for a place to hide them. Unfortunately, they cannot hide the Knights or Masters without raising suspicion, so they must remain behind. Meanwhile, the acting Chancellor Mas Amata and Admiral Tarkin are continuing their plan. Even without Palpatine, they know what the Chancellor had planned for the Republic and work to establish the Empire, but under their rule. One of the first things they do is propose replacing the clone army with a conscript force. The recent deposition of Palpatine makes for the perfect reason, as Tarkin plays up how the clones mindlessly turned against the Chancellor with the activation of one order. He questions the Kaminoans and how many more secret orders they have. Instead, he insists conscripts will be less easily swayed. Tarkin also proposes that Mas Amata be granted the same emergency powers as Palpatine, as the war has not yet ended, and the brewing Jedi crisis only grows worse. The Senate agrees to this, putting even more pressure on the Jedi. But with all this happening, they receive a coded transmission requesting they meet outside the Senate building, promising to have valuable information. Anakin and Mace decide to meet this stranger. They head into the dark alley at the foot of the Senate building, their hands never leaving their lightsabers as they pace the ground impatiently. Suddenly, a figure appears from the shadows, and they see Senator Hale, whose slender neck cranes around nervously.
Thank you for coming. Time is short. You need to know what Mas Amata and Tarkin are planning.
We're listening, Senator.
They're consolidating power. The Senate has already agreed to grant Amata the same emergency powers Palpatine held. But that's not all. They plan to strike at the CIS Council and end the war. Once the war is over, they'll claim the Republic no longer needs you.
Why are you helping us?
Because it's not just the Jedi they are planning on replacing. They also intend to replace the clone army with a conscript force.
I have an idea. I might know where the CIS Council is. Palpatine was suggesting I take them out before I turned against him. If we can get them first, get them to surrender to us, then it would be a lot harder for the Republic Senate to sideline us. It is risky, but we must tread carefully.
I can deactivate the clone's inhibitor chips too. It should make it harder to control the...
She suddenly screams as a blaster bolt bursts from her chest. Shouting can be heard from the alleyway as the Coruscant guard appears, firing blasters at the two. Anakin and Mace both ignite their lightsabers and block the oncoming shots. Anakin rushes forward, throwing himself into the center of the group and swinging his lightsaber to destroy their weapons before throwing them aside. But as he takes the first group out, more arrive, while a gunship flies overhead. Mace faces down the gunship and leaps aside as it fires its turrets at him. He rolls aside and sweeps his hand out, letting the Force take its aim off balance, while Anakin blocks the clone's attacks. He tries to get in close and begins using his hands, punching and kicking the guards to knock them out. He glances back at Mace just as the ship adjusts its aim and fires. Anakin leaps up and blocks the attack, redirecting it towards the wing and sending the gunship falling to the ground.
We need to move. Now!
The two Jedi deactivate their lightsabers and hurry down the streets as chaos follows. More clones pour in, but the two leap past them. Each time a guard gets too close, they sweep him aside while using the Force to knock their aim off guard. However, the holovid of Mace and Anakin fighting their way through the Coruscant guard is recorded by their captain, who sends it to the acting chancellor. The footage is doctored to make the Jedi appear as the aggressors before being shown to the Senate. As the video ends, the Senate erupts into angry shouts and cries for justice. Tarkin, standing beside Maz Amata, keeps his expression cool, but his eyes flicker with satisfaction.
We must act swiftly. I propose we send a military force to storm the Jedi Temple and disarm them before they can do any further harm.
The Senate, already rattled by the footage, quickly rallies behind the proposal. Although some like Bail Organa and Padme try to calm the situation, they are quickly shouted down, and a decision is made.
The Jedi will no longer be a threat to the Republic. It's time to secure our future.
Despite that, the Jedi now have a plan. They have two targets, Kamino and Mustafar. Mace will meet with Lama Su to demand the deactivation of the inhibitor chips, while Anakin will demand the surrender of the CIS Council. The sun rises over Coruscant. Mace Windu and Anakin Skywalker stand beside their starfighters, preparing for their separate missions.
I've redirected Obi-Wan to Mustafar to try and support you. Meanwhile, Ahsoka and Yoda will remain here to organize the defenses.
Sounds good. May the Force be with you.
Mace, Skywalker, wait. Before you go, I need to say something.
Anakin turns, his brow furrowed as he meets Mace's gaze.
I would like to say thank you for everything you've done. I was wrong about you. I shouldn't have doubted your loyalty to the Jedi. You've proven yourself time and time again.
Thank you, Master Windu. I've only ever wanted to serve the Republic.
We're about to perform the greatest service. Try not to get yourself killed.
Same to you, Master.
They bow before each other, before boarding their starfighters and departing for their separate destinations. When Anakin arrives on Mustafar, he finds a familiar figure waiting for him just out of sight from the sentries. Obi-Wan removes his hood and helps Anakin out of his starfighter.
You didn't waste any time getting here.
I'm glad you can smile given the circumstances. I sense you could use someone to keep you in line.
Anakin laughs, but they both understand the seriousness of their situation and prepare themselves as they make their way inside the massive command center. Inside, the CIS Council is in chaos. Newt Gunray, Wat Tambor, and other separatist leaders argue among themselves as they stare at the holomap with Republic forces advancing on all fronts. For many, they believe defeat is only a matter of time as the Republic closes in. Suddenly, the heavy doors burst open. Anakin and Obi-Wan step inside, their cloaks billowing, lightsabers unlit, but at the ready. Newt Gunray screams and jumps back behind his guards, who ready their blasters. But Anakin raises his hand and shakes his head.
We're not here to kill you. Not yet.
We've come to negotiate terms. If you surrender now and agree to only negotiate with the Jedi, we may be able to offer concessions, guarantee your lives.
That is a most unusual request. Why would the Jedi demand such things if they speak for the Republic? You are trying to trick us.
I assure you, we are not here to trick anyone. We want to end this war peacefully.
I don't believe you. You're hiding something.
Others nod in agreement, starting to stand behind the Viceroy as their guards stand in. Suddenly, Anakin draws his lightsaber and slashes it across the table, slicing a portion off.
Enough! You have two choices. Surrender now and live, or die when the next Republic forces arrive. And they won't offer terms.
The gesture scares most of the leaders, who look up in shock, wondering what just happened. But they quickly quiet down and murmur amongst themselves. Just then, the doors to the command center blasts open. A squad of clone commandos storms in, weapons drawn. But rather than point them at the CIS Council, they take aim at the Jedi.
Get behind us!
The Council scurry behind the Jedi protectors as their guards open fire. The clone commandos and their support troops return fire, turning the large command center into a battleground. Guards move to cover their leaders, kicking up tables and chairs or ushering them to cover. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan and Anakin deflect blaster fire as they fend off waves of clones. Although the guards are not as well trained, the Jedi presence rallies them and allows them to hold their ground. In a flurry of movement, Anakin spins, slicing through a commando's blaster. Obi-Wan leaps forward, disarming another, but rather than back down, the commandos ignite electro staves.
We were told we might encounter Jedi.
Rather than attack directly, the two cross their staves and launch an electric current around Anakin, who screams in pain. This allows a third to jam his staff forward into his chest. The force of the blow sends Anakin flying back. Obi-Wan rushes to his side and helps him, blocking their next few attacks, but feels himself getting surrounded as one strikes at his side. He winces and throws the commando back with the force. This leaves 2 commandos to deal with, while the 4th brushes past him and leaps up to slam his staff down on Anakin. The young Jedi shakes off his confusion just in time to roll aside from the blow. He kicks the commando and staggers him just as he gets to his feet. By the time he's standing, the commando is back on him, sweeping his staff in wide arcs that send sparks flying. This is meant to keep Anakin back, but the young Jedi isn't intimidated. As the next swing comes, Anakin catches the staff in his mechanical hand. Although he feels a sudden shock, he powers through it and slams his fist against the commando's head, channeling the force to strengthen the blow and knocking him out. Anakin snatches his blaster and fires at one of the commandos battling Obi-Wan. With only one of the elite soldiers left, the Jedi Master goes on the offensive. His lightsaber slashes furiously and forces the trooper into a corner. As he raises his staff, Obi-Wan slams the hilt of his lightsaber down on his arm and pins him against the wall before raising a hand over the commando's face, and suddenly he doubles over, falling unconscious. With the rest of the clones dealt with, the council members cower behind the Jedi, terrified but unsure whether to trust them or fear them.
You see what's coming for you? Surrender now, or next time there will be no negotiations.
Meanwhile, the situation on Coruscant is not going well. The army Masamada sent is bearing down on the temple, and the Jedi inside have been besieged for several days. It's only thanks to Ahsoka and Yoda that the temple was able to last this long, as their careful organization had allowed the Jedi to hold off the assault. But the Coruscant Guard is making slow but steady progress into the temple, and they are right on the verge of breaking through. Yoda and Ahsoka are in the thick of the action with the most experienced knights, deflecting blaster fire and disarming clones who get too close. However, their numbers are endless, and their small group slowly begins to give ground. But as they are about to retreat, the clones pause as well. A wave of confusion ripples through their ranks as they look around at one another. Suddenly, Yoda feels his holodisc rattling and reveals a transmission from Mace Windu.
Attention all clones. You have been misled by the Senate, who have used inhibitor chips. But now I give you a chance to decide for yourselves. If you do not agree with what is happening, return to your barracks. But if you do, there is little we can do to stop you.
The clones stare back at them and refuse, dropping their weapons and bowing down. Shortly after, Anakin and Obi-Wan return with the CIS Council, who agree to negotiate with the Jedi. With their role as peacekeepers strengthened, and the news from Lama Su that inhibitor chips were activated, the Jedi goes on the offense, with their allies accusing Tarkin and Masamada of abusing their powers like Palpatine. Padme calls for a snap election in which Bail Organa wins, who drops the charges against the Jedi and begins negotiating a peace settlement with the CIS through the Jedi. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.